Good morning, audience. Welcome to another week of The Sense of Things. Ron and Jeff here. We've got a good show today. We're going to talk a little bit about, Ron's done some research back looking at the dot-com era versus now and the comparisons and contrasts that you're going to see. We'll also be talking a little bit about what's going on internationally with the hopefully peace in the Middle East for once in 3,000 years. Those of us that have been around a while realize that may or may not happen. A little bit of talk about the government shutdown. I've been getting a lot of questions, and we've been getting some questions on the YouTube channel about what benefits are still happening during the shutdown, what's going on and all that. So I'll go through that really quick with you. We'll talk about the next upcoming Fed meeting. And last but not least, what the market is pricing in as far as interest rates going into next year. So stay tuned. We'll be right back on in just a second. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Ron, how are you, my friend?
I am doing well. I can't believe it's Q4. The weather here is fantastic. I'm not sure how it is by you, but I got to tell you, we always say never a dull moment. It's just amazing. Just the news cycle, it just doesn't stop. Even through the summer, it doesn't stop.
No, it used to be nothing happened in the summer. And now it's like with program trading and everything else, the market just keeps on chugging, even if people are out in the Hamptons.
But if you even think about it too, you take a look at historically, at least that I remember in the last 20 years, the government shutdowns always create a down market because of the uncertainty. Nobody knows. I figured it'd last a week. We're just past a week now, and I don't think they're any closer. But meanwhile, what's going on? Market's still going up.
Yep.
It went down the first couple of days and popped right back up. I'm miffed. I wrote it in my Q4 newsletter. I call it altitude sickness, and I've heard that expression before. I don't understand how the market is at these levels. Just doesn't care what's going on. Money's just pumping in.
Yeah. And there's still, when you look at the cash position, though, there's still a lot of money sitting on the sidelines still at this point. What point do you, and it may be we're reaching that where people are like, holy crap, I can't wait anymore. I've got to get into the market. And it just keeps pushing stuff up even farther. I honestly don't know, but you can't just sit on the sidelines and wait and think that it's going to pull back, because it just isn't. It's been a pretty resilient market no matter what's going on.
Look, they say better than 70% of the market is electronic algorithmic trading in the market. But here's the difference. Forget about all the money on the sideline. Just paycheck money and whatever is going up on the market because nobody's selling. They're just adding. Forget about all the stuff in money markets and high yield are getting under 4% now.
Every paycheck, 10% is coming out and jamming into the stock market, in most cases into the S&P or the NASDAQ, and it just keeps pushing more money into those stocks that are there.
And as long as nobody's going to sell or say, hey, I'm going to take a percentage of my chips off the table, it's going to go up. All right. Where do you want to start?
I want to kick off yours, and because I know you've got your week in the history or whatever. And
yeah. All right. So here we go. Actually, some things I will say.
Anytime.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me see here. Why don't you take control right now?
Okay. Let me see if I can share. Okay. Can you see that?
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, cool. Let me just make sure.
I got a lock up. I'm back, but go ahead.
Okay, cool. Okay. As of last night, is the Israeli-Hamas war over? Well, as those of us that are realists realize, it's never going to be over for Hamas. They're going to figure out a way to come back at this point. However, at least if you can stop the beating back and forth for a little bit and get the hostages back. So what's going on overnight? They've signed off on it's actually the 20-point plan. I thought it was 21-point. 48 living and dead hostages are to be released by Monday. Israel is going to sign the deal as of 5 p.m. today, and ceasefire takes place. Israeli troops will move back to what they call the yellow line, which is outside of where they're at currently. They'll still be in Gaza, but they'll be pulled back and a ceasefire happens. And then additional humanitarian aid will increase immediately. So that's what we know right now. That's phase one. Phase two then starts to get into the governance of that area, the rebuilding that's going on. And fortunately, I think there's a huge interest throughout the Middle East of people coming in to help rebuild. When you figure the Qataris and the Emirates alone have built massive cities out of nothing, they should be able to get something built, hopefully relatively quickly, so that people aren't living out there. Hopefully we have a little bit of peace in the world for a little bit. The reality is most of these people have been fighting for 3,000 years, and I just don't see it changing overnight.
Yeah, just to let you know, it's been almost 6,000, but that's okay. But here's the other problem: is the 48 living and dead hostages everybody that's remaining?
Yeah,
I don't know, but I don't trust Hamas. So even if they do this, they're going to renege on something else because they want to remain in power. Part of
yeah,
the deal is they're no longer in power,
yeah.
and they won't relinquish that whatsoever. It's a tough subject to talk about. We'll see what happens, but I don't believe Hamas will
Oh,
keep the
I
deal no
don't
matter
either.
what.
They've been shown to be just absolute distrustful, warrant
Well, that's how
distrust.
the Israelis have gone and done what they did.
Yeah.
It's been now 2 years, and they haven't released. They haven't committed to any of the things that were discussed in the beginning, and we'll see what happens. I don't think it's still not gonna end well,
No.
period. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay, shutdown day 9. The question I've gotten a lot of, and especially my clients that are saying, is my Social Security going to be affected? Is my veterans benefits going to be all that type of stuff? Am I going to be able to go to the doctor? You need to understand what gets funded by what. So inside the government, there are required spending programs. Those are things like Social Security, veterans benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, student aid, SNAP. Those are not affected in any way, shape, or form by these continuing resolutions. That's for discretionary spending within the government. So none of your benefits in any way, shape, or form are going to be affected by the government shutdown. Law enforcement, public safety, air traffic control, TSA, disaster relief, and the military are still working. Now, the sucky part for them is they don't get paid starting next week. If I would say anything to the people in Congress that are dragging this out, you know what? People have lives and they have to pay bills, and you guys are getting paid while they're not getting paid. So get off your butts and figure something out for this, because that's going to start affecting people, and it's going to start affecting the rest of us when it comes to stuff like air traffic control and TSA. It makes it really hard to get up and go to work when you can't pay your bills and you've got a mortgage due. Government operations, mail delivery. Mail is actually a separate agency. It pays for itself. Passport and visa services. They just keep raising the price. Federal judiciary, Congress, and the president, they're all still funded. So they're continuing to do whatever they do at this point.
And the other thing is, if you own treasuries, you will eventually get paid. It's just your interest is added on to whatever period that you didn't get paid originally.
Yeah, exactly. So there are some effects. Essential services are still being paid out at this point. What is not happening during the shutdown, I used a Texas term here, pert near everything else. So economic data, for those of us that are economic nerds and enjoy seeing all the stuff come out, all of that's basically on hold at this point. So there will be no economic data until this gets back in place. And usually there's about a 2 to 3 week lag once they get back to get this stuff up and running again. So I would venture to say we will have zero economic data through the rest of this month, through October. So, both the markets as well as the Fed are flying blind a little bit. That said, no government data at all is coming out. You'll get private data, so you'll get ADP payrolls. We will not get the employment situation. We will not get unemployment, all that kind of stuff to get an idea of where things are going. And trending, we've seen some kind of bad trending data here recently. So it's important to start getting that data back. Next Fed meeting, October 28th through the 29th. They'll make their decision on October 29th. What are they going to do? Odds are we're probably going to see a 25 basis point cut again. At this point, if you were to look at what the market is pricing in, they're pricing in between 4 and 5 cuts out to June 2026.
But let's say there's no government data in October.
Yeah.
How can they justify doing anything, not doing anything, or even a quarter point cut?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the market, if you look at the futures market, if that happens, we're going to see one heck of a downdraft in the market. I can tell you right now, because the Fed futures rate or the Fed futures expectations is a 25 basis cut by 97% at this point in the future.
They're looking at least 1 to 2 more cuts before year end.
Yeah. Yep. Which would make sense because you're going to have October and then December. We have no November meeting. So at the most, we could have 2, but we could have just 1 if the Fed sits back and says, we don't have any data, so we just can't do anything at this point. So it's going to be an interesting back end of the month. I think it's going to be important to get some kind of data here so that they can make a decision. Although, as much as they say they're data dependent, they've been flying by the seat of their pants a little bit, claiming that the tariffs are going to have impact, which I see some impact, but I don't see a dramatic impact on the market myself. So
I hear you. All right. So let's do one this week in history. So first one, 1767. Mason and Dixon draw a line dividing the colonies, calling it the
Mason-Dixon Line. I did not know it was that far back. I thought it was actually in the kind of early 1800s.
I actually thought it was in the 1800s, but
yeah,
I never studied that one in school. So
I never knew when it was drawn, but that's interesting. So
1845, U.S. Navy Academy opens.
250th anniversary. Hooah!
There we go. 1940, my Beatlemaniac man, John Lennon, was born, October 9th. Yeah, I thought this was interesting. 1945, the first patent filed for the microwave. And think about what we've done in the last 80 years with the popcorn and quick dinners and all the other good stuff.
Now, here, let me give you a trivia question.
Okay.
What Hollywood star had a patent filed for basically what we use for Wi-Fi today?
Oh, I heard this. Who?
Hedy Lamarr. Absolutely one of the most beautiful women of her time period and seriously sickly smart.
Yes. 1956. The first enclosed shopping mall opens in America.
Interesting.
And beginning the mall rat sensation. Up until probably the mid-90s.
I was going to say, which has now died out.
I know.
And now
they're all
open
distribution centers for Amazon and Best Buy now.
Pretty much.
I love this one. 1971, London Bridge reopens after being dismantled in London and rebuilt in Lake Havasu. I saw this a few years ago. If anybody is not familiar with this, go to the Wikipedia page. It's a very interesting history, and the quick story is there was an American businessman, I think his name was McAuliffe, and after World War II, London was rebuilding stuff, right? This bridge goes back a couple hundred years, and they were building a bigger London Bridge. What are they going to do with that? Well, let's put it up for auction. People bid $1 million, $1.5 million, and he said, you know what? I'm going to bid $3 million because it's going to cost. He bid $1.5 million because he thought it was going to be a total of $3 million, $1.5 million to dismantle it, and $1.5 million to bring it over and rebuild it. I think it ended up costing $7 or $8 million, but when they built it out in Lake Havasu, there was nothing. It literally they built an entire town and city around the London Bridge. It's literally on the border of California. If you don't know the story, it's actually a good 5-10 minute read. You should check it out. Now, here's another interesting thing of this week. 1973, Vice President Spiro Agnew resigns, opening the door for Gerald Ford to be vice president, who then becomes our president. And he's the only president in history who was never elected president. Another
That's
little
interesting.
little
Yeah,
fact.
because he didn't win his reelection after that. So yeah,
Nope.
yeah,
And think about it, he was never actually voted by the people to be vice president.
correct.
1975, judge reverses the deportation order for John Lennon. I don't know if it's Amazon or Netflix, has a really good documentary on this that President Nixon was trying to get him out of the country because he was a subversive to our America, and they were trying to get him on that one drug charge in London when him and I think Paul McCartney had a joint.
Yeah,
And they were trying to deport him for years, and it was just overturned.
yeah. It's just ridiculous.
50th year anniversary of Saturday Night Live debuts. I
Wow.
mean, this has had its iterations over the years of good and bad. Yeah, I miss some of the older cast, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I stopped watching it somewhere probably mid 90s when the Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman generation, when they left, it was like it
Well, Will
was
Ferrell was there in the late 90s, and
yeah.
there was
See,
a
I'm not
couple
a
of
big
good
Will Ferrell
characters
fan.
there.
Yeah. I'm not a huge Will Ferrell fan. I
Wow.
just yeah, just never have been. He's just weird and it's the people who like Elf like that generation.
My
So
son was able to recite almost every line from Step Brothers, Elf, and Anchorman.
oh,
Hey, listen, I have a movie bucket list that I give out to prospective
yeah.
clients and clients, and I sent it out, and somebody called me one time and said, "You're missing a movie on your bucket list." I'm like, "What am I missing?" He goes, "The best Christmas movie." I'm like, "What? Which one?" He goes, "Elf isn't
Oh.
on." I'm like, "Elf is a good movie, but it's not a bucket list movie."
That's not a bucket list movie. I'm sorry. Wow.
And 1975 for our third
Born to Run,
trifecta in 1975, Born to Run with debuts by Bruce Springsteen.
the last good song that Bruce Springsteen ever did in his entire
I,
career.
I could debate you on that. Living in Jersey for 20 years, I think he had a few other good songs.
No, pretty much
All
by
right.
1990, he was done.
All right. He had a lot of
What do
good
we got?
songs on the 84 album. You don't think so?
Well, 84, okay. So by 1990,
All right, 1990. All right, I
he
got
hasn't
you.
had a single song since then that's been worth a crap.
All right. Here we go. So this is as of June 30th. Here's our
Okay.
sector performance. Utilities
Industrials are
is
still
shocking.
rocking.
Utilities is shocking the world. Financials have surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
Healthcare is down here, and that was my pick for the year. But actually, I'm more invested in the biotech space than the
Mm-hmm.
general healthcare space. Although in the last couple of weeks, it's really popped up nicely. So anyway, I think this is pretty interesting. Looking at this, we'll see where we are at the end of Q3. But yeah, the industrials, all the potential reshoring and more money going into building in America has been propelling those stocks. We'll have to see if it continues because as we all know, it ain't cheap to build a factory and labor is not cheap in the United States.
No. Now, like I said, there's a lot of money coming in though, and some of this, especially in the manufacturing space with the accelerated depreciation and stuff like that, helps to offset some of that higher labor cost and everything else.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Once again, I think it's always good to have more people working and working in good jobs and not just the service industry anymore.
Well, that's until AI and robotics takes them.
Well, but I think that's part of it to begin with. With a lot of these new factories that are being built, you look at Amazon.com or Amazon. Yes, you have people that work for Amazon or that are primarily drivers at this point. But when you go to look at one of their delivery facilities, inside it's all robotics that are going
Yeah.
on. And yeah, one of my friends that I interviewed on my other podcast, the Freedom Nation podcast, a couple of weeks ago, we had a really long discussion on robotics and stuff like that. And he's an engineer. So he was talking about, with Tesla and the new robots that they're building here in Austin, those robots, when they finally get them out and launched, basically that will drop unit labor costs down to $1 per hour at that point. So yeah, it's not necessarily going to create a ton of new jobs, but it will create more manufacturing period within this country.
Well,
And
just
I think
Yeah, people just have to be retrained on how to fix
Yeah.
robotics and maintain
Oh, and I mean,
robotics.
one of the largest robotics trainers in the country is Amazon
Yeah.
because they want to hire people in. They don't need people to carry boxes from one side of the building to the next. They need people that can fix the robots when they break. I think that's the reality of it. And if you think you're just going to get a factory job where you go in there and bolt stuff together, quite frankly, a robot can do that better. But what I would be getting trained on, or what I'd be starting to train myself on, is understanding AI, understanding electronics and robotics and stuff like that. That's where you want to put your education money at this point.
I agree. I agree.
So
All
cool.
right, a couple of other things. I thought this was interesting. Looking at the NASDAQ 100 back from the mid to late 2000s to now.
Okay.
And yeah, there's definitely some similarities here, but I think the better chart is this one. Looking at this as of October 7th, and I think Jim Bianco posted this, and I borrowed it. But if you take a look at the top 8 stocks, they may have a different weighting in the NASDAQ 100 versus the S&P 500, but they have a very similar market cap based on the weighting. And look at this over here under the NASDAQ 100. Those 8 stocks is almost 70%. 8 out of 100 are almost 70% of the move. And this is too high too. Basically
Mm.
almost 40%. If you add in the top 10, the other 2 stocks to make up the top 10, it's over 40%. 10 stocks out of 500 make up 40%. I believe that breached that level that is now the highest in history. Look, it's tough to say, do we have altitude sickness just on these 8 to 10 stocks? Probably, but they're profitable. They're making money.
Yeah.
They're increasing their top and bottom line. So how can we really say, hey, they're overpriced?
Yeah.
Because they are growing into their multiple.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty
Well,
interesting.
and you think of it, just even looking at Apple, it's not all AI because Apple just finally freaking figured it out with AI a little bit. So, I mean, it's yes, NVIDIA is all AI stuff. Broadcom is part AI, part cell phones and stuff like that. I mean, these are companies that are making money. Yes, I think we're going to get to a point where they start to outpace their ability to earn. But when you see every quarter, these guys are banging out with massive size companies, still banging out 20 or 30% earnings growth. That's pretty dang impressive because with the size of some of these things where they're getting close to being $1 trillion companies, some of them
Yeah.
are, and still able to crank off 20 or 30% earnings growth. That's pretty impressive.
Oh, I agree. And but the other interesting thing, I know I brought this up in another podcast, that 30% plus or minus of NVIDIA's revenue is from 4 companies: Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta. And I know
Yeah.
Apple's in there somewhere too, but 40%. So if you think about the top 8, NVIDIA is getting 30% of the revenue from 4 of the other companies.
From 4 of the other companies. Yeah.
Isn't that kind of cannibalizing a little bit of that? I don't know.
Yes
And
and
is it
no,
just a
but
land grab to
yeah.
say, for every 2 chips that I buy, you get 0? I don't know.
Yeah. But I think one of the interesting things is this week you saw that AMD and OpenAI have got a partnership now. I will tell you, I've always been an Intel guy. Every PC I've owned for the last 30 years has had Intel chips in it. I just got a new laptop that's got the AMD Ryzen chip in it and the Radeon chip. I've never had a better computer in my life. This thing is faster than I'll get. And AMD used to be junk, but they've got something together. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see. AMD, I think they've got the ability to challenge NVIDIA a little bit going forward. They just don't have the juice right now as far as size of company that NVIDIA does. NVIDIA was a really small company 15 years ago. And I think AMD's got it figured out, and that becomes another alternative for a lot of companies that say, hey, the NVIDIA chips are more expensive, but if I can get something very similar from AMD, does that start to move some of that number off of at least the NVIDIA side? I don't know. I don't think it's there yet, though. NVIDIA's just got the animal spirits right now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Until next week.
Yeah, exactly. The week after, I'm going on vacation next week.
All
So the
right,
week
2 weeks.
after.
I got you.
All right, guys, thank you for joining us on the show. We're here for you always. Please, hopefully this helped allay some fears and answer some questions for you. We will see you guys back here on the very next show.